You speak about the reliability of utility markouts from the utility itself versus the third-party location companies. We're going to play a little game I'm calling The Big Dig. So I am so thrilled to be presenting another Entech Roundtable, and this time our topic is Pennsylvania One calls coming from all directions. I'd like to kick things off by introducing my panel. And if you're not familiar with our panels, our roundtables, or me, my name is Christine Gonzalez, and I am the storage tank queen here at Entech Engineering. And for all of our formal affairs, I always wear my crown. On our panel from Entech, we've got Eric Moore. He returns, I think it's like your 6th roundtable, isn't it, Eric? I keep having you back, right?
It's close.
I adore Eric because he is the total package. Engineer, operator, consultant, and he was a recent utility manager. And he worked alongside Entech for many years while executive director at the West Branch Regional Authority. And he's been a project manager with Entech for, I think it's over 2 years now, right?
2 years, yeah.
And in my mind, it feels like you've been here forever. So
it sure does feel that way.
Is time flying? Yeah, I think it's flying. Okay. Also from Entech, I'm very happy to have Paul McCarty joining us. He's been with Entech for 21 years as a civil designer and drafter manager. And a lot of people don't know this, but Paul, in his spare time, he likes to make houses for stray cats.
That's funny. I'm never telling you anything ever again. Ever again.
One of the reasons our roundtables are so interesting and educational is we love to have our industry friends join us. So today we've got Norm Parrish. He's a manager of education with Pennsylvania One Call, and he has 40 years of experience, and he's also a rabid Eagles fan. I outed you, Norm. Sorry about that.
I know.
We've also got Neil Derstine. This is his 2nd roundtable. He's the owner of Derstine Company. And he gave me a master class in the installation of mixers and THM removal equipment and storage tanks. He is phenomenal. Thrilled to have Neil here on the panel again. We also have Doug Haupt. He's a supervisor of public safety with PPL, and he's been at this for 32 years. And finally, Matt Shapansky. He's the project manager with Allan Myers, and he's been at this for 10 years, and he just loves digging things up. That's what he told me. So,
not utilities.
To kick things off, I'd like to first check in with our audience. We always like to know what you're dealing with out there in the field. So I'm going to launch a poll right now. And so this is your biggest struggles. I'll give you about 10 seconds. So pick up 2 answers here. And it's, what are your biggest struggles when it comes to Pennsylvania One calls and digging? So is it who you contact? Oh, there's a couple acronyms here that I just learned about. One of them, the AVAs, alleged violation reports, and then SUI. When I watched the recording, Norm, or you guys were talking about, I thought it was SU, but it's SUI. Is that correct? The subsurface utility engineering?
SU.
I just
you had it right.
Okay, cool. So give another 5 seconds for our audience to pick what their biggest struggles are. And what this does is it lets us and the panel know, okay, where should we focus our time and the conversation the most as we move along over the next 75 minutes. So I'm going to end the poll right now. And I will share the results with everybody out there. So here's what we're looking at. It looks like the #1 thing is the utilities are slow or non-responsive when marking or remarking. Okay. Sorry, Doug, we're already picking on you.
That's all right.
Like, that didn't take long. So, and actually, like, I admire your courage for coming out here. But I mean, the whole point is let's talk. Let's talk and really understand what everyone's dealing with. Okay, now it looks like the second biggest one is who does what and when for the alleged violation report. And third is who contacts whom for the Pennsylvania One call. So a lot of it is just plain communications. Okay, excellent. So thank you very much, audience. I appreciate getting your feedback with that. And you know what? just a broad thing right now to kick things off. Norm, I'm actually going to pinpoint you right now.
All right.
And if Norm, are you able to give us a sort of a 2-sentence explanation? What is PA1 call? Are you guys like what is it? What is it? What do you guys do?
Okay, so anytime that we do anything, we kind of have to say our mission statement, and our purpose is to prevent damage to underground facilities. To promote safety, we provide an efficient and effective communications network amongst project owners, designers, excavators, and facility owners. Key words in that is we are the communications network. Just by chance, we are celebrating year 50. All right, so, and I try to say, well, yeah, it's Pennsylvania One Call's 50th year, but actually it's everyone's 50th year of doing one calls and making sure that we keep not only our employees and our operators safe, but the general public safe. So we're going to have 7 safety days throughout the year. We will actually have one in Allentown, so I'll make sure everybody gets information on that and help us celebrate 50 years together this year and really kind of I guess, promote 811 in a grander scale.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that overview. So, number one concern from our audience is slower non-responsive markings and remarkings from the utilities. So, Neil, why don't you kick us off? Tell me about when you guys are out there digging or trying to dig. What do you guys see? What do you guys struggle with in that realm with the markings?
Probably the one that's sort of difficult, and I'm not sure how it all shakes out, but since we work at a lot of gated facilities, whether it's pump stations, wastewater, boosters or whatever, the word on the street is, well, nobody comes inside the fence, so you're pretty much on your own. And what are you supposed to do? Meet him out there and unlock the gate when the guy comes or the gal comes, or so there's always that assumption that they're gonna come to a certain point and that's it. I've run into that a lot, and it I don't quite know how that can be made better for contractors like us, but I know inside the confines of a facility, and you know, the wastewater and all that, there's so much underground stuff, it's just plain ridiculous. So it's pretty dicey just out of the gates on that. So that part I would like to have maybe more clarity down the road to kind of figure out as a contractor, what do you do? Can you get everybody that does their markings that you know they have their utilities there to meet you on site when the facility's open, or is there ways that we can make that easier for contractors? I think that's probably our biggest challenge.
Okay.
Our second biggest challenge is laziness on our part on, if you have let's say you have a job 3 hours away and you want to mobilize next Wednesday and you're going to start digging a hole. Like, well, you're going to have to get somebody out there to do all the markings to get that all laid out. And then you got, you know, your time frame of when you need to start construction, all that, and the time you need to allow people to get out there to get the markings done. And then, hey, by the way, that's a locked facility most of the day, or what. So there's a lot of stuff that you know, it's just like, how do I approach that? It's like, we need to do it, but it's 3 hours away. So we're going to put a guy in a truck to drive out there to do the markings and does all that. Nobody comes inside of it anyhow. So that part would be, for us, would be really nice to figure out how to get that better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent points, excellent struggles. Matt, you have something to share?
Yeah, Neil, you hit like the number one bullet for me. I mean, most of my work with Myers is with the water and wastewater group, and we have drilled into our head that the PA1 call doesn't come inside the fence, doesn't come inside the plant, and basically, you know, what that does is it sometimes we forget to go through the process, or it gets put to a back burner, and then when we go outside the fence, we have to remind ourselves, oh, okay, we're not inside the confines of the plant. The way I look at a PA1 call, or, you know, I have some experience in Maryland, Delaware, too, Miss Utility, but for purpose of today, PA1 call is, I look at it as step one, right? Step one is to get the one call called out, get the markings done. You know, if you're doing a complex ticket, have the meeting, but then, you know, I always took it as the burden is on us, whether we're inside the fence or in the streets. You know, we have to do our due diligence to locate the utilities. But in my mind, you know, because ultimately it's my crews or, you know, your crews digging, we have to make sure we're aware of what we're digging through. Had an instance the other day at a plant where we were inside the confines of the plant, and actually it was marked out, but it ended up being an abandoned line, and we hit it anyway, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control. Like what was this? Why did we hit it if it was marked? Because the markings were actually pretty good, but oh, by the way, it was abandoned. So sometimes in the confines of a plant, it even gets hairier, just for that very reason. So you hit like number one for me on that list, Neil. It's kind of funny we have the same topic.
Yeah, Doug?
Yeah, so from a facility owner side, some things that help us. So you're working for a municipality, a sewer authority. So there's got to be, if you're 3 hours away, there's got to be somebody at that municipality or sewer authority that can be our point of contact. So when you call your PA1 call ticket in, have that person's name and number on the ticket. Contact Joe at this number for access inside of the fence. That allows us then and our locators to make that call to say, you know, hey, Joe, we're going to be there tomorrow morning around 8 o'clock. Can somebody be there to open the gate? We got to have access to the meter so that we can hook up to the meter and mark from the meter out. So that contact is critical. You know, if it's you as the excavator and you're 3 hours away, that doesn't help us. Then you may have to then make those phone calls to try to set up somebody out there, you know, to go meet us. So if we have a direct contact, it's much easier for us to contact that person ahead of time. And
it also helps to not make the executive director of the authority the contact on the one call. So I can say that from experience. So make sure you've got a local guy, whether it's the operator or hopefully the authority has someone who's dedicated to one calls. Now that's a big ask for smaller authorities and boroughs and townships, but it does help to have someone who's on spot for that, and it's in their job description. But yeah, definitely don't just default to who's my contact at my client. It's the executive director. Don't put him in, because you won't get what you need.
Yeah. So there's two parts to that as well. So that contact, you know, with the municipality, but then also your contact up in there in that one call ticket information is very, very critical for us. The person or someone that is on site during construction. Because if you were to hit something and we get a damage ticket that says damaged electric, my first call is to the person that's on that ticket. Are you okay? You know, is everybody okay on site? That's our first question. So not only having that contact for us to get in, but also then someone that's on site. We stress to our folks internally, a lot of times it's the clerk that's putting in the ticket and their name is on the ticket. Well, that doesn't help someone, you know, if they need to get in touch with someone out in the field.
And to piggyback off that, that goes both ways. One thing that's always worked with us in the past is getting to know the local guy. Like if our superintendent or whoever's on the job full time's got that guy in his phone book, and then you get into a new, oh shoot, we did the ticket, but we screwed up the boundaries or whatever. We actually got to get this area. You know, it does help if you make that connection both ways.
And Matt, when you say the local guy, you mean the local guy for the utility?
Well, sometimes the guy who's marking it out, whether, you know, if it's a UtiliQuest guy or whatever, you know, hey, this area got, you know, the mark went away. You know, we threw some dirt on it. When we dug the dirt back up, all the marks were gone. We'll resubmit the ticket and we'll go through that process. But sometimes it's nice when you got the guy's name in your phone book and can say, hey, can you swing by today?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot said during that discussion. So I just want to chime in on a couple things. All right. And Matt, earlier you said, yeah, when one call comes out to mark, just want to make sure that everyone understands, right? We're not coming out to mark anything. We're going to give that information to Doug, and Doug's got to get his butt out there and do what he needs to do. But the other, it just comes from the standpoint that we started to talk about, hey, you know, it seems like facility owners are locating their facilities up to a point, and then, you know, they stop and say, hey, you know, that's not ours, it's beyond the gate, it's owned by the customer, and those type of things. And yes, you're going to run into that, really in particular in eastern and parts of central Pennsylvania with the sewer and water companies. You go out west, it even gets even worse, that some of the electric companies out there do have a demarc point or a point of connection where at the property line, they stop, and it's the owner's responsibility to mark. So feel blessed that we don't have that scenario, because part of my background is I was with Verizon for 31 years. Don't hold that against me. And I did sit on the board of One Call, and we were dealing with the rewrite of the law in 2016. And I became aware of that, and I couldn't even believe how that was possible, because I was in the telephone world, and we go all the way up to the house. And I said to myself, wait a minute, what happens, you know, for a homeowner that you say, well, I'll locate it here, and they have a nice big home, and no one's going to mark any of those facilities going further. And that is a serious problem. So when we were drafting the law at that point, we put in what we call the Good Samaritan Clause. And basically that allows facility owners in this eastern area, whatever, the water and sewer, to actually, they are able to mark beyond where their facilities are, and they can give you at least some indication on the property, hey, this is where we think this line is, all right? And you're doing it as a Good Samaritan. So as a Good Samaritan, if you're wrong, you're not held liable. But the ideal is to at least give an excavator an idea that, hey, you know what, we think the lines are going in this direction, or yeah, I can locate this for you, and they won't be held liable. So we try to educate some of the excavators that, hey, if you do run across that and you're talking to the locator, you just need to remind them that, hey, you can do that. Now, some companies still may refuse to do it because their attorneys have told them, hey, we only mark our known facilities, we're not taking liability, even though there's language in there to protect them. So that was probably one of the key points that I wanted to bring out in that conversation. The other point what Doug made is the good contact information. I mean, you're calling in a One Call. We try to say, hey, that contact person, don't make it the person that's sitting in the office, because most likely they don't know what's going on with the job. So we try to educate and say the contact person should be that person that knows what's going on. Put their name and number on there. That way, locators, when they need to call or they run into a situation of no access, now that call is going directly to someone that can help them versus going back to the office, or as someone said, the director of public works or whatever, right, who's just going to sit there and go, well, I'll try to relay this to Bob, Bob relays it to Charlie, and it just keeps going down the road. And the longer that happens, the bigger delay that you have.
Excellent.
Go
ahead, Eric.
I'd like to add one last thing to that. It's my number one recommendation to any of our municipal friends out there that are having slow response times, to make sure you have someone, you know, as we discussed, who's dedicated to the One Call process, and who is making an effort to get to know that local guy. That local relationship saved our bacon on several occasions where we needed someone to come out quickly. And so as we got to know the local guys, yeah, sometimes it was us who had to come out quickly because they had a problem. Yeah. But if you can keep that relationship good and you can work on it, then it really helped us to shorten those times and minimize and eliminate delays.
Yeah. And Eric makes a good point. That relationship that you develop, especially if you're a company that's working in the same area, you're going to run into the same locators. Now, you don't have to buy them breathless, although if I was a locator, it sounds like a good idea to me, all right? But you establish a relationship because just what Eric said, sometimes you're going to have your back against the wall and you need assistance, and it's always good. I mean, these guys are not, shy of sharing their contact information. You go, hey, Robert, man, any way you can get out here and take a look at this tomorrow? And he'll remember that, oh, you know what? This dude helped us out and gave me some more time to do what I needed to do. Yeah, I'll be out there. And that push and pull will go a long way into getting your work done.
Love it. Communication and working together. So reminder to our audience, we're taking questions and comments and suggestions from you guys as well. So use the Q&A button. And we do have a question that came in from Tim Boyd, long time Roundtable attendee. So he asks, can you speak about the reliability of utility markouts from the utility itself versus the third-party location companies? So who can help me out with that? Neil.
Not so much the third party, but what we're running into, we've always run into this, and and we had one where we went through a 14-inch transient force main. It was a nightmare. It was all done properly, everything was marked and all, but when it all came back to, when the finger pointing came about, was who was the guy or gal that marked it, and what was their training, and what was the tools they used to do it, and it was like, well, it was the township highway guy. And they thought they knew where it was from the previous time it was excavated, and they put a couple flags in the ground for us. And I was young at the time, and I trusted it within 3 feet. I knew we kept our excavators away, but we hit it, and it was a mess. So we still run into that, like the actual, like when I was saying, where you come into the fence and you stop. Well, like PP&L, let's say they come into the meter, and that's as far as they go. The owner then owns that electrical line from there into wherever. So who is that person that's marking that out, and are they qualified to do it, or are we basing it off of red line drawings or assumptions, or Jim, who used to work here years ago, said it's over there? Those are the things that, as contractors inside the fence thing, you got to really be careful, because you're pretty much flying blind on a lot of it. It's not that the owner of that facility is not capable. It's just like it's not really like a per se professional third party. They come in with all the bells and whistles and they locate everything and all that. It's like, it's different. I mean, I do it the same way. When I had a deck built behind my house last year, the carpenter guy said, hey, are you going to do the one call? I'm like, what for? We're just drilling 8 little holes. He says, I'm not building unless you do the one call. So I did the one call, but hey, guess what? It's my property. So I am the guy that's got to mark it out, right? PP&L only came up to my transformer. I took it from there. So what were my qualifications? Well, I think I know where the sewer line goes from the house to the sand mound or whatever. So those are where we really run into the problems. And I don't know how that can be solved, other than, like you said, we need to really be teamwork between I would like to see owners take more ownership of their property. And I don't know that all of them really maybe understand the gravity of that, but this is your stuff at this point, and whatever you can do to help me, whether it's red line drawings or previous construction photographs or whatever, all 3 of us, whether it's third party, contractor, engineer, whatever, owner, if the more info and I got a great story to tell you guys if you want to hear it at the end of this thing, if we have time. It's an amazing story that involves one company. It's literally crazy. But that goes down to teamwork, and man, if we can somehow figure those, look, you might think it doesn't sound like much, but when you're in an area where it's just so much stuff going on, and nobody can really legitimately market, because either they don't know or they don't have the tools or whatever. They don't know who. I used to do, like, what, I made the call, I'm good, walk away. We did our thing. We made the call. Believe me, that's the least of your things you need to do. Making a call is easy.
Bill, you said something very interesting, because you teed up that you had a contractor there and the contractor said, hey, you know, you as the owner, you need to call the one call, right? Well, next time that happens to you, you tell them, no, that's not correct. That person
he's my next door neighbor, and he's a friend of mine, so he knows me. He's like, I'm not making the call, dude. You're doing it, because I know if I make the call, you ain't going to mark it.
Understand, but if he's doing the work, and when he hits Doug's line, all right, and you go, well, I have a one call here, and Doug's going to go, that's nice. I'm glad you have a one call, but he doesn't. Right. Yeah. So here's your bill for me repairing this. So I just wanted to get that out there also. The other is, one call, it's a science, but it's not a perfect science. All right. And, you know, I'm going to go back to my telephone days. You know, how long have facilities been in the ground? Gazillion years. All right, and I think people get this idea that, well, utility, you know, big Verizon, they're updating their stuff all the time, and they're updating their maps and all this other good stuff. No, right? It don't happen like that, because they, you know, they didn't get big by accident. They carve and try to save money here and there or whatever, right? So guess what? The records are not very good at times. All right, some areas they may be better than others. You get to old municipalities, and no offense to Charlie, who's 87 years old, and he's still the roadmaster, still doing everything for that municipality. And you ask him, hey, where's your records at? And he just holds his head, right? Because it's all here. All right, we're never going to get away from that whole scenario. But as folks are designing things, and if folks are going through the SUE process, it will eliminate some of that back end stuff that you end up going, oh, we didn't know this was here. And there's an opportunity to discover what's there if they're following the SUE process up front for design. Probably wouldn't help you in a maintenance type world, but if you're getting a project that's fully designed and that designer went through that SUE process, most likely they have uncovered everything possible that could be interfering with your construction. And again, that isn't a perfect science, but it's the best science we got.
Actually, speaking of the design side, I'm curious, Paul, from the designer standpoint, what do you struggle with? What's hard for you?
Speaking of the plants, we've gotten into trying to push the owner to go with third-party line locating before we even start design. And then when we have that, we get that on the drawings, and then we sit down with the owner or the operator and try and figure out what lines are still there, which lines are abandoned, so we can better get an idea of what we're working with, because we're going to put new tanks, new pump stations in, and we want to know what lines we're going to be hitting, which ones we got to relocate and stuff like that. And then if that's not something that they want to do, we put it on our drawings that we recommend or require the contractor to get third-party line locating before they start digging for the project. So that's kind of how we've trying to get not around it, but trying to get some better idea of what's in the ground for design.
And when you say third-party line indicating, is that simply a survey of the site, or would that include?
No, they do ground penetrating radar to find the lines, the pipes that are in the ground and stuff like that. So they can do electrical and all the ductile iron and stuff like that. So it comes back with really good results.
Okay.
And again,
some companies will provide you with the depths of pipes if they can get to them. So,
and that's part of the SUE process. So right there, you're into SUE level B. All right, and as you go along and he finds this out, now as an engineer, you can determine, you know what, that water line and that electric line looks like they're going to interfere with my project. I need to do SUE level A to find exactly where that is so I can put it on my drawings and make sure that when I'm doing a drawing that minimizes the interference, but I'm also communicating to the person doing construction that that line is definitely here. We daylighted it. We know exactly where it's at.
Okay. Okay, Matt, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think Neil brought up a little bit ago, like what are the qualifications of the guy marking it, whether it's from the local utility owner or a third party. And I can share, I won't say for who, but I worked as a college intern for an engineering firm that was the engineer for townships. And I was given assignments to go mark utility one calls out. And I honestly, was not qualified to do that. And I have plenty of stories where I'm crossing streets and just running across as fast as I can and look back and go, close enough. Let's move on with my day. So for me, and having that experience, the way I've always we've approached it, and it's never perfect, right? But I've always said the one call is step one. In a lot of instances, we have to then do our due diligences, which might be steps 2 through 10, to make sure we have the as-built, we've talked to the plant, we've gathered all the information that's in people's heads. And then if it comes down to soft digging or having a back truck on site, GPR, or using our own electric utility locators, we have to go through all that process before we put a bucket in the ground. And the standard that we hold for ourselves is if we didn't do steps 2 through 10, step 1 is to make sure we're not legally liable for what we struck. But steps 2 through 10 is our standard of saying, did we keep our guys safe? Did we, in a lot of instances when you're working inside the plant, that might be the owner you're working for. You don't want to, rip out the main influent to a wastewater plant. That's not a good look. So we hold ourselves to that standard. And to tie it into the engineering thing, it's like the question of, well, how do you fix it? And a lot of our jobs are publicly bidded, low bid work. So you're put in a position of, well, I can't, we did a job in the city of Wilmington, not Pennsylvania, Delaware, but water mains from the 1860s were in there and a whole bunch of other stuff, the main fiber lines, the Capital One, et cetera. And, you can only know so much, right? And you can't back truck the entire job. So you at some point, you either decide to win the job or you go to the nth level extreme and you're put in this position of risk reward. Do I have the low bid or do I make sure everything is done to the letter of the law? And that's a bad position to put yourself in. So from an engineering standpoint, from another standpoint, I love the idea of having a pay item for utility location and basically saying, hey, we want you to do 50 yards of soft dig or whatever, and give us a price for 50 yards of soft dig. And now every contractor who's bidding has to carry a number for that, and we'll do it. And it's just part of the price. And I never have to be in a position to say, let's just take it. We think we're good. Let's go. We got to make money. Anyway, that's
I just, the kind of thought process that's happening now is that, hey, and I understand the bidding process, but project owners have to understand that right now this underground construction community is looking for the engineering process to kind of find those lines and go through, the process as we step through. And I was explaining to the Entech group earlier, is when you do the one call, you've basically just done SUE level D. And basically all you got is you're saying, hey, here's the records that I have. Now you as an engineer, you're looking at this going, all right, now, what do I do with all this? Okay, well, you're going to go to SUE level C. I got to get this stuff surveyed to kind of compare what was in the records versus what's on the ground there. They come back, you may go, okay, I know this doesn't conflict, but this does. Okay, what do I need to do to kind of verify that area that things are conflicting? Oh, You do that ground penetrating radar. You start getting a better idea of what's in the area of your construction that there may be facilities. Once you get that, then you're doing SU level A to really daylight those facilities. So you're not trying to vac the entire construction area. You're just trying to vac where there's facilities that intersect with what you're trying to construct. And folks would rather that happen in a design phase versus trying to, and this is what the construction folks are complaining about, instead of throwing it back onto them and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you just start soft digging and see if you find something here. All right, find it ahead of time, then and verify, then your construction folks can just go forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Norm. I want to run over to Eric for just a moment. Eric, I'm curious, with from the owner standpoint, what did you experience as far as line detecting, putting the onus on the contractor? What's your experience with that, and what did you find that really, really works?
So generally, from the owner side of things, we built a digging crew that could do manhole to manhole sewer replacement, that sort of thing. So we had to really sort of focus on it. But a lot of the utilities, water and sewer, don't have dedicated personnel for this sort of thing. So what you end up with is whoever can respond, whoever can go out and line detect, or maybe it's the one guy who gets stuck with it all the time, and his equipment, maybe it doesn't work so well anymore, but it's not in the budget to replace it. It's not a priority, and it needs to become more of a priority for our clients, our municipal authorities and townships and boroughs. And it really needs to be a training focus as well. So if they're going to locate their own stuff, that barrier is always going to be there to some extent. So we did use a little bit of higher levels of SU. We didn't have a whole lot of good experience with ground penetrating radar, but we did eventually we got our own Vector truck, and we could do our own soft digging. And that was great because we would just have our own guys cut a line across the road in the swath where we were going and cut it 10 feet deep and see what we found. And we could do it on our own and in our own time before the contractors came in. So that was something I would definitely suggest. Every sewer authority should have a Vector truck and be able to do a little bit of soft digging with it. Doesn't have to be like a full-time job for anybody, but it's really helpful, especially as noted by several of the other panelists. You get into these areas where we know nothing about these really old utilities, and you find, I guess UGI is not here, so I can bash them a little. I think we found 4 or 5 gas lines in the same road at one point. And they said, oh yeah, those are abandoned. It's like, we don't know that. You marked the one over here. When we hit the first one, it was a little upsetting. So, it hit gas lines, it still smells like a gas line because that scent that they had still hangs around. So yeah, it's definitely a tool that I would recommend.
Okay, excellent. Do you have any feel for how much those vac trucks go for? How much would it cost?
They're not cheap, but a small one that can do digging that we had was probably about $250,000.
Is it something where different municipalities could share an asset like that, or rent one or something?
Yeah, some smaller municipalities, municipal systems do share, and we actually, to help pay for it, we rented ourselves out. So the neighboring townships, if they needed some soft digging done, they would call us, and it actually got so popular that we had more calls for work outside of our area than we really had time to do. So we had to start turning people down.
You're subcontracting now. I love it.
And there are firms that'll that will do this for you also. So that's something that could always, a municipality could always enter into a contract with somebody to do it also.
Okay, excellent. Doug, did you have a comment? Mm-hmm.
I think back to the question on the kind of liability. So for us, we do use a third-party contractor to do our locating for probably 95% of all of our underground. They go through extensive training when they're hired. through that third party, their employer, and then are supervised for weeks after actually going through that training. And then they are liable for the paint they put on the ground. We hold them responsible for it. If they happen to mismark or not mark something per the one call ticket, then we hold them responsible for that damage. So, and then it goes back same side from a contractor side, making sure that first you have the one call for the right scope, and doing the potholing at the crossings as needed, and making sure that you're not mechanically digging in the tolerance zone. But so, we hold our third party locators responsible. Internally, we do downtown Allentown. We have a low tension network, as well as some of the bigger cities, Harrisburg, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Williamsport, where our physical substation and electricians may have to go out and do that marking for that low tension network. And then everything inside of our substations gets marked by our electricians. We don't allow anyone inside of the substation. So then we are responsible, and we are liable for the paint we put on the ground in those cases.
Okay, just a reminder to our audience, we are taking questions from you guys through the Q&A. So I'm going to throw this one over to Paul, see what your experience is. This comes from Lisa and Carl Peterson, longtime viewers. They watch together. I love this. What's your experience, Paul? How deep can infrastructure be accurately located? What's your experience been?
We've only really done one where we actually wanted the depths of piping, and that was in Lake Harmony. We've gotten piping up to 6 feet up there, and that was pretty accurate. So when they started digging, we knew exactly where those were. The deeper you go, the less accurate it gets, and that's told to us as soon as we ask for that. But it like I said, it comes back pretty good. They give you like a profile of everything that's in the ground too. Okay. So we were happy with the results we got.
Okay, anyone else experience how accurate is this stuff when you get the results back from the people? What have you guys seen? Eric, you're smiling. Eric, is it really, really accurate?
Sometimes it's spot on, and sometimes it's not. There's a lot of things that you don't expect, like in Montgomery, a little town, one of the side streets was made out of concrete and had rebar in it. So the radar just reflected back up, so it was useless.
Oh, so let me say that a lot of the stuff we're doing is in the macadam or in the grass. So
in the grass, it was good. And if you don't have a lot of conflicting utilities in the way, we had some success there. But it really, from my perspective, I like soft digging. I respect the folks who do the ground penetrating radar and the other forms of detection, but I like to see it. I did like that level A. I want to see it. I want to know where it's at.
Got it. Yeah, Matt, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, and you kind of touched on it with the rebar, it depends on how much other noise and interference you're getting. If there's a couple pipe runs in staggered at different depths, then it's going to get less accurate really fast. If you're in the cornfield and there's only one pipe, you probably get right on.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and we're gonna do something right now. My panel doesn't know this is coming. Well, actually, Eric and Neil have been on my panel before, so they may have a sense that I've got something up my sleeve right now. So we're gonna play a little game I'm calling The Big Dig. Okay, I always like to hear stories from the field. So the Big Dig, what we're going to do is ask all the panelists, what is the oddest thing or the coolest thing or the oddest thing you've ever found when you were digging, or perhaps heard about that when people were digging on a project of yours? So like, was there buried treasure? Did you find bones, bodies? Like, what'd you find out there? So Norm, what's the coolest thing you ever dug up?
Oh, man.
Okay. You think about it, Matt.
I got to think about that one.
Okay, Matt, what's the coolest thing you ever dug up?
I mean, I think we found maybe animal skull type things. I found some old. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, something similar to what you got on your wall, maybe. I don't know.
That's a cow skull I got from Mexico.
Oh.
Cool. Doug, how about you? What's the coolest thing you ever dug up?
I think probably some of the interesting things that you find in some of the cities are just the older type wooden water pipes and sewer pipes that, you know, probably were put back in, you know, the 1800s. And it's just amazing of the condition that those facilities are still in, you know, this 100 and some years later.
You know, Doug, that's what I was thinking about too. Just running across a wood pipe and you just go, wow.
Yeah, I mean, for, you know, water, sewer, they probably run across it all the time, but, you know, different, I don't do a lot of excavation, but just things that, you know, our guys out in the field, you know, we're only going, you know, 6-7 feet in the ground, but with a pull but you know, sewer lines, I was on a site where they were about 28 feet in the ground right next to one of our transmission lines. That's how deep they had to go. So just some really interesting things that you can come across from way back in the day.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this out to everyone. I really want a section of wood pipe. And so if anyone's ever digging or knows of someone who found wood pipe, I will come out with a chainsaw and get it. Kim Mazer in our office, Bob Weir, they have it. And I want one. Like back in the day, I was like, that's so weird. And now I want one so bad. So if you ever hear about it, give me a call. Neil, what's weird? Oh, and by the way, audience, you guys will be voting on the best answer. I forgot to mention that. Now, Neil, what's the weirdest thing or coolest thing you ever found underground?
Oh, it wasn't weird. It was cool. We built a pump station down on the main line back in the day. It was, I think we were like 32 feet down. It was big. It was like a 75-foot square hole and all, you know, heavy shoring and all that. So as we kept going down, it was nice digging. There was like very little rock, but it just looked prehistoric. It changed as you went. It was all different. And I kept asking people, like, is this is like not been dug before? You could tell because it had like veins of the soil going through it. It was the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in Earth. And it just looked like, you know, was there something prehistoric here that was part of this, or it was really, really fascinating to watch. Like as you went down, you just, okay, now it changed yet again. Now it's got this vein of black sand going through it, and you go down another 6 feet, and it was completely different. It's like, wow, this is really some amazing stuff. And it hung up really well too. When you were digging it, it didn't like fall in and crumble. It just stayed right there on a straight vertical wall before we even shored it. I found that, like, I'd never experienced that before in anything digging, that I saw so many different flavors of the soil.
And do you remember what town you were in?
Yeah, it was East Town Township, a little town called Berlin.
I'm in West Town Township.
Just nothing but trees down there and little goat paths for roads. That's about all what's in there.
Wait a minute. Berlin is not a little town, man.
Okay, Paul, what about you? What's the coolest thing you ever heard about being dug up?
I haven't really dug anything up, but yeah, like when you walk around the office here, some people have some cool stuff that they've dug up. And I was going to say the wooden pipe that Kim has is pretty neat.
Yeah, you're right. And Eric, how about you? What's the coolest thing you ever dug up?
So I know like Matt's guys probably never do this, but some contractors like to throw a lot of stuff into the hole when they're backfilling. And so it wasn't at West Branch, it was at a different client, but we uncovered a perfectly preserved glass bottle that was a soda bottle from like a local soda company from probably like 70 years ago. And then we found about 2 cases of beer cans, enough beer cans that one of the construction guys started putting them in a bag so he could recycle them and get money for them. So apparently that crew was enjoying their work.
I love it. Great answers. So as I mentioned, I'm going to survey our audience and check in with you. So who do you think had the coolest buried treasure or experiences out there when it comes to digging these things? And once again, reminder, I think there's probably a bunch of people at Entech who would love to get their hands on some wooden pipe and I know City of Philadelphia was digging stuff up a year or two ago and found some. York has a, hey, if you ever go to York Water's main office in downtown York, they actually have a museum that's part of the office with these wonderful old pipes and old valves and just gizmos and gadgets. And I just love seeing the old stuff because so often it was built to last. So it's sad. It's not that way anymore.
They were actually, they were replacing the street out front of our building over the summer. And they actually were digging up the old trolley lines that they paved over. So that was actually pretty cool to see them do that.
Oh, how
they
neat.
dug down and just tore them out.
Love it.
There's the historic days in Warrior Run up in Northumberland County where they do different demonstrations. And one of them is a fellow makes a wooden pipe. So maybe I'll go and I'll see if I can get you a brand new wooden pipe section.
Oh, well, and also get video of it. I'd love to see that. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to release the results of the poll. Let's see who won the buried treasure. And it is, ding, 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 Eric Moore. Congratulations. Everyone got votes, so good job. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories. I always love hearing about the weird and cool stuff you find. I'm disappointed there was no pirate's treasure, though. Maybe we need more work on the coast. So
I'm not sure any of us would admit to that if we actually found treasure.
You're absolutely right. So I'm sure you all found it. So reminder to our audience, we are taking questions from you guys throughout. Want to take one from Jim Willard, old Aqua guy. And so he says, can you address the issue regarding marking of abandoned utilities? What's the current status of the, I guess, PAOC position on this? So anyone want to chime in on what you're hearing about abandoned utilities? And I'm not, is it PAOC or PUC?
I guess they were trying to say PUC.
Okay.
So the last rewrite of the law, facility owners have to mark their abandoned facilities that are 2018 and beyond. All right. So if they right now, and we'll use UGI because they're not here, right? If UGI abandons a line right now, even though they've taken that out of service, they'll be responsible to indicate where that abandoned line is. The problem with that is we're talking 2018 and beyond. Everything before that is grandfathered. So that whole abandoned line process is going to take time to filter through because all the other abandoned lines, they do not have to mark them. Matter of fact, their statement would be most likely they have taken those off their records, so they may not even know where those abandoned lines are. And basically law basically say you need to locate your known facilities that are on your engineering drawings. It's not on the drawings anymore, they're not going to be able to locate it. So unfortunately, it is an area where, hey, folks will run into abandoned lines, and it's always worrisome because, you know, when you hit something and you don't know what it is, or still, as Eric says, still has that residue of gas coming from it, it can be very scary.
Other experiences with the abandoned lines and how to deal with them? Anyone else? Yes,
so from our side, you know, we're probably 80% of the time marking abandoned and active line because you know, when we're marking, we are sending a tone down our neutral is what happens. And a lot of times what will happen is it bleeds over. Okay, it'll bleed from the active line to the abandoned line, which could be separated by 3 or 4 feet. So if we get a tone, we're going to put paint down. So in most cases, that's why, you know, we get questions, why is there so much paint on the ground? But we can't, the locators don't know which one is live and which one is abandoned, but they are getting a tone on both facilities. So that is why in a lot of cases on even electric and phone. So phone lines back in the day, phone and cable, when we're at an underground transformer pad, you have the phone pedestal right next to our transformer. And we allowed the phone and cable companies to connect to our ground wire system, our grid around the transformer. So they bonded to our ground wire. So again, as we go to locate, we at times are actually toning phone and cable lines as well. So there's different tones, and that's what the locators are trained on. But we get occurrences where we bleed over and we get a better signal on a phone or cable line than we do our own line. So, but a lot of times we're marking abandoned and active lines.
Okay. Yeah, to touch on that, going back where, you know, older buried developments, there were agreements that electric and cable would be in the same trench, right? Which creates issues now going forward when a locator is actually putting tone on there and the tone's just bleeding over into these other facilities because they're in the same trench.
Okay, interesting.
But that, you know, there's ways to mitigate that. From a locator standpoint, they just need to have the proper training and know how to manipulate the equipment that they have.
Yeah. Okay, and Neil, you had a comment?
Well, it was part of that story I was going to give you, but yeah, abandoned lines can be very dangerous, and that's part of what that story I was going to give you. But it did involve that. So. Okay,
and you know what? When we go 75 minutes for this, but at the end, I'll always take comments and other stories. So I definitely want that story from you, Neil.
It's pretty amazing.
And we're going to keep the audience in suspense, and they'll have to stay on a little longer to
listen. They'll like the story. They will definitely like the story.
Or we record these and put these on our website afterwards, so you're always free to rewatch our videos afterwards. Do you know what? Back when we took our poll at the very, very beginning, the second biggest concern for our audience, and I don't think we've addressed that yet, is who and when makes the alleged violation reports, the AVRs. So I'm going to pose that one to Matt and to Neil. Matt and Neil is the guys out there. Are you the ones who would end up making this call? Because is that like when you guys are digging and you hit something? Is that when you make the call? Or Matt, fill me in. What happens out there?
I'll be honest. I'm not familiar with this process as well. I don't know if Neil, you have more experience, or Norm, you want to comment?
Okay, Neil. Can you speak?
But everything that's bad ends up on my desk. So I have to, the buck stops with me. So you got to get people on the phone and get it. And I not that I enjoy it, but I get right in there. You got to get the problem solved and get it dealt with and deal with it. So you got to get whoever on the phone and do whatever you got to do to get the thing back on track again.
So help me out. This happens when you hit something?
Oh yeah, when you hit something, then especially like if you hit PP&L's line, you got to get them on the horn right away and report it and go through that whole process of the location of it and what happened, and they file the report for it, and all the finger pointing stuff comes later. Okay. But you can't deal with that at the moment. You have to deal with getting that utility back to where it was before you damaged it.
Okay.
That can be very stressful.
I can imagine, because like everything's happening very, very quickly. Eric, what's your experience been with it?
Just that, each party is supposed to make a call or a report. The person who's digging, the owner, the engineer, which is one that was kind of surprising. Even the design engineers need to be involved. And I will say I did end up in a position where we hit our own sewer line. So we were technically supposed to route ourselves out to the PUC. I won't say how that went, but it was a little odd.
Yeah, there are guidelines for folks filling out a alleged violation. You do it on our website. So if you're an excavator and basically you fill out a alleged violation for anything that you feel is a violation of the law by action or inaction. All right, so if you're an excavator and you hit a line, you need to report that within 10 days. The project owner should report it also in 10 days. And let's just say that line happened and the designer knows about it. Well, they need to do a report within 30 days, and the facility owner needs to do a report within 30 days. And what happens is, as Eric knows, if these things do happen and the PUC is trying to piece something together, right, they may come back to the design firm and ask, hey, where's your AVR? And the design firm is like, hey, I don't know what you're referring to. I know nothing about the incident. Right, and they'll tell you, well, now you know about the incident. We need an AVR of your information. So really that 30 days comes from the time that you are aware of what happened.
Okay.
So Norm, can I just interject and ask, an AVR, is it just for when you hit something, or does it also count for, say, the utility doesn't provide the drawings or doesn't attend one of the mandatory meetings?
Any alleged violation of the law. So if you put in a request for design plans and you don't get them from Verizon, I hate to say the word, right? You should be filling out an AVR because they did not fulfill their requirements of the one-call law.
Okay, good question. Doug, what's your experience been with these AVRs?
Oh, yeah, it goes both ways, as I said. So damages occur, whether it's us because we marked it wrong or because the contractor dug in the tolerance zone and hit us. We have to file that AVR, as well as for our contractors. So we have a lot of contractors that work for us on the system. So we become the project owner. And when our contractors hit something, we have to file that AVR as well as the project owner. So I'm heavily involved in those AVRs. I'm generally on the PUC Damage Prevention Committee meetings every month, representing our company to say, we either accept what we did or we don't feel, we were at fault. We have that option. We have that ability to essentially defend ourselves. But we file a lot of AVRs every year. And again, it could be for a damage or because, one of our crews happened to be driving by and saw an excavator doing work, doesn't see paint on the ground. There's gas, there's water, all over in this development, and they're not seeing paint. They'll call us, they'll call me, and we'll do a search. And if we don't find something, we'll try and get a hold of that contractor. And if they don't have one, we'll file an AVR for not having a one call. So
you're saying there's actually contractors who go out there and just dig away and don't make a one call? Absolutely.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, yep. Oh, absolutely. And I'll say it's the smaller, it's your smaller, what I say, mom and pop type companies. There are a lot of companies out there that don't know 811 exists.
Technically, if you want to install a mailbox at the end of your driveway by yourself on a Saturday morning with a digging bar and a shovel, you could get killed.
Right.
Yes.
So with that steel digging bar, trying to get a rock loose. And
so
it's just simple as that.
Before Neil tells his story, and that's so funny that he says that. So I got to go back. Now, I remember I told you 31 years with Verizon. Through that time, I had basically all management positions. When I was a board of director, I had right away, and I had the one-call systems and all that good stuff. And I'm sitting on the executive board of one-call. So I have a stake and rail fence in my backyard, and I want to move it. Right? So I go, yeah, I think I'll move this thing. And remember, in 2016, I helped write the update for the law. So I said, yeah, next weekend I'm gonna do this. My wife said, well, you have to call in a one call. And I'm looking at her, hey, I'm Norm Parrish. What are you gonna tell me what I need to do? Right, so I had to educate her. I was like, I'm not using powered equipment. I'm going old school, which was a mistake. Right, because I'm going post digger or whatever. And I was like, so I don't need to call according to the law. I helped write this thing. And I'm giving her a whole laydown. And she walks away. She said, okay. Saturday comes, and I'm still in the house sipping coffee. She goes, I thought you were going to do the fence. Say, you freaked me out. Be my luck. I rammed that sucker in there and hit a gas line. I'll be on Action News, you know, PA1 call, executive board member, right away engineer for Verizon fails to call one call and blows up his house. I said, you know, so I'm gonna do what you tell me to do. Right? But I was right. I knew where all the lines were, but it was that reminder of her, who she listens to everything I say, that she said, hey, you need to call one call. So I usually tell that story when I'm doing my programs. It's like, that's every once in a while, you know, even Norm needs a reminder. I was right though. I just wanted to let you know I was right. But I just wanted to be careful.
Excellent, good story. I'm going to go back to questions from our audience. So I'll throw this out to our panel. This comes from Rich Harrison from Entech. He asks, are there any utilities that can refuse to locate their lines for security reasons, such as high pressure gas transmission lines? So has anyone heard about anything like that?
Generally, no. They'll locate it. Now, you may have company when you are going to go dig. I can guarantee you that. If it's a high pressure line, they'll locate it for you, and then they'll tell you, you're not doing any digging unless I'm out here. Here's my contact number, and tell me when you're going to begin doing something.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay, another question from our audience. This comes from Bob Kearns, also from Entech. He says, we specify third-party line locating for our contractors to complete during plant work because the client often doesn't know where things are. The contractor completes, but also calls Pennsylvania One Call. How should the authority comply? So I guess what is their responsibility as an owner?
So if they're owner with facilities, they need to respond either by trying to locate, and now they don't know where they are. Their response is probably going to be, hey, when the third party person locates for us, we'll know where it's at. So they still have that responsibility because they have the facility.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on that? And by the way, Norm, Tori Morgan from our office says your wife is a genius.
She would say that.
Okay, another question and a reminder to our audience. Actually, we're coming up on the end of the roundtable, but we can go a little longer if you still have questions. So this is something from Joe DeLuca out there in our audience. He says an issue we run into a lot is mostly with the tickets from the gas company. It is when they make the one call and check every box, front, rear, left, right, public, private, street. The explanation states mark the front and the left. So they've checked every box, but the explanation says mark front and left. This is conflicting information. I would email the contact for more information, but never gets a response. We respond to the most as insufficient. Then they would just put in an emergency ticket. This happens when the excavator and the person making the ticket are in two different states. So have you guys had this? Eric, you're shaking your head up and down. Have you had the same sort of experience, or like what can we do with this sort of thing?
I did encounter that one time, and essentially it took hounding the gas company to find the right person to say, will you please stop doing this? And after that, we didn't have a recurrence of it, but I don't know how that works as far as a long-term strategy if there's a lot of turnover of staff there. Because it's probably someone who is not a particularly high-level employee, just clicking all the buttons to make sure they cover all their bases, and it's really not doing it correctly. So you kind of have to get a hold of them, but it is very hard to find the right person. When you respond to the ticket, we had zero luck getting responses through that process. We had to actually call our local guy and say, who do I need to yell at? And then he would tell us, yeah, call the office, ask for this guy. He's probably doing this again. So again, work your relationship with the local guy.
Excellent. Doug, anything from PP&L for dealing with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if all the boxes are checked, I mean, we're doing a sweep around, depending on the size of the project that's going on. So we're marking and hooking up to every meter on every house, running it out and running from transformer to transformer. But if it's a lot more time for us if they say rear and there is no work going on in the rear of the property. Now we're having to go back and possibly actually locate from the back side of the development because we're not sure. So we look for the white paint. Okay, white paint should be placed by the excavator for their work zone, and then we'll make that call. Again, the importance of the contact person on that ticket being somebody that can answer the questions that we have. What exactly are you doing? What do you need marked? And then we document that information. So, and just I think I heard you say in the question was they respond insufficient because they can't reach somebody. And then the contractor in turn does an emergency ticket. That's a violation. Just because we as a facility owner say this is insufficient because we're not sure what you're doing, that doesn't allow that contractor to then place an emergency ticket to get us to come out and mark those facilities. That's a violation.
Okay. Well, I see we're up against time, so do want to share a little information with our audience and then take final comments and Neil's awesome story. Can't wait to hear that. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. And a reminder, if you enjoyed today's roundtable, please join us. We've got 2 others scheduled so far, shooting for 1 a month throughout 2022. So can't wait for Thursday, February 24th. I love the tank one. So this is, I didn't know you could do that with water tanks. And we'll talk about tank jackings, re-erections, new roofs. I've got a bunch of old, seasoned tankies on my panel. So lots of good stories there. And Wednesday, March 9th, we're having a returning panel on water regulatory updates for spring 2022. A lot of favorites. I keep using the word old, and that just is not right when it comes to Tori Morgan from Entech. Patty K. Wisniewski from the EPA. We've also got Serena from Spot Stevens and McCoy. So lots of people who were on our panel last summer talking about water regulatory updates. And then coming soon, got more I&I programs. I think I'm going to have Eric Moore on that one because he always has fabulous I&I stories. So that's for a project from start to finish. We've got one on funding, pump station design, Wonder Women. So if you want to sign up for any of these or more information or see when they're scheduled, go to our website, entecheng.com. And across the top menu, you'll see resources, drop down to roundtables, and that will give you all the information on the upcoming roundtables as well as videos of past roundtables. So huge thank you to my panelists. We've got Eric Moore and Paul McCarty from Entech Engineering. Always love hearing your stories. Norm Parrish, so good to see you and get to hear your experiences with Pennsylvania One Call. Thank you to Doug with PP&L. Thank you to Matt with Allan Myers. And big thank you to Neil for coming back from Derstine Company. If you're interested in getting a PDH certificate or an operator CEH, please email me at cgonzalez@entecheng.com. We actually still have one more question from the audience. This is from Todd Kaufman at Entech. He asks, where does the responsibility lie when Johnny homeowner removes the utility markings to mow his grass, or he just doesn't want to see them, and then he doesn't replace them? So panel, help me out. I see Doug, you're shaking your head. So what happens then?
In my opinion, it's the responsibility of the contractor. So once we place the paint and flags, we're no longer responsible. The contractor then has to do his due diligence to protect those markings and flags that are placed. And that may be by pictures, but offset out to the street. And then you could, it happens often, whether the flags get pulled or maybe you don't get to your project until the end of the window, the 10 days, and the grass was mowed twice. So now the paint's gone, okay? So it becomes the responsibility of the contractor.
I think it comes down to something that we said in the very beginning, a little bit of communication. I mean, contractor, you're dealing with a property owner. Obviously, you're either doing work near their property or through their property, whatever. You're going to need to have a conversation with them of the importance of these markings and why they're there, and actually tell them it's really against the law for you to remove them. But let's have a conversation of what is your concern? Oh, you want to mow the grass? How do we preserve those marks while you mow the grass and those type of things? So it really just kind of goes back to that contractor having dialogue with the property owner.
Yeah. Okay. So no more questions from the audience that I see, but to wrap things up, final comments from my panelists. So Norm, anything else important to share with the viewers?
Nothing else, but I do appreciate you inviting me to do this. I find it was very rewarding and some very good questions. And Christine has all my contact information. If anyone has additional questions or concerns, just email me.
Excellent. Matt, any final words of wisdom?
No, same as Norma. I really appreciate the opportunity. I learned a lot too, listening to everybody. So just thanks for the invite.
Excellent. Doug, I hope you didn't beat you up too bad. It wasn't too bad, was it?
No, not at all. I enjoyed it very much. I thank you for, and actually Norm reached out to me. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel. Would love to do it again.
Awesome.
You get a lot of good information, being able to talk back and forth between designers and contractors and engineers and facility owners themselves. So we can all learn. I'm always learning. I'm learning every day. Feel free. Christine has my information as well. If there's ever something that isn't right or doesn't look right, make the call.
Yeah, good point. Paul, any final words of wisdom from you?
No, but I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh my God, loved your comments and stories, so thank you. Eric,
I'm never telling you about my cats ever again.
You know I love you, Paul. Eric, any final words of wisdom for our audience? You're on mute right now.
I know I do it at least once. There's absolutely nothing wrong with building shelters for cats. I do it myself. But generally, just a reminder, especially to the engineers that are listening in today, that this is not a magic bullet. It's not a one call and you're done. You got to do the legwork and you got to build those relationships and make an effort. Good
point. Yeah, so much about relationships and communication. And Neil, I'll give you the final word. So I'm so excited. And we had, I think, like 43 people out there in our audience today tuning in. So almost all of them have stuck around. They want to hear your story. Neil, talk.
The ones that stuck around mustn't know me. We get a call about 10 years ago. We get a call from a local factory out here in town, a big facility that was built back in the 50s. And they're like, we'd like you to come out. We're having trouble with our pump station. We have our own pump station and we're having trouble with it. So we get out there and they're like, we had our force main goes out through this field beside our factory and then it heads towards the street. And we had another plumber guy in here and the force main burst twice on us and we had him in to repair it. And now it just isn't the level, the pumps turn on, but the level doesn't go down. It's not pumping. So I'm like, well, I guess we have a blocked force main. You want me to research it? So they're like, yeah, if you we got to figure this out. We have to pump and haul with vac trucks. So I'm like, all right. So it goes out to the street. So we obviously got to go find the manhole where it goes from force to gravity, and nobody knows anything about that. The plant personnel people don't know. So I'm like, well, it goes up through the streets of Souderton, I guess, my hometown. So I got to go get the Souderton people involved. And then, I know them all. So let's go over to the highway department and start talking. So we go, oh yeah, it goes up here to the other side of Washington Avenue and goes to gravity. That's the manhole. Fine. So we go up there, we pop a lid and yep, there it is. There's the 6-inch force main coming into the gravity. I'm looking at it like, yeah, but it's dry as a bone. It looks like it hasn't been used in years. There's literally no moisture on the pipe at all. So, so we hire a company to come in with a gizmo machine, you know, with the climb up the pipe. So we put that thing in and it heads on back. It goes about 500 feet and can't go any further. It comes to a dead end. So they're like, all right, well, we'll go out on the street then, because we have a marking machine now that can signal down to the little alligator in the pipe, and it'll give you the exact spot in the street where the blockage is. I'm like, all right, well, this is getting easy. This will be a piece of cake. So they go out there and they mark it on the street. Like, okay, well, here's where we're going to have to dig it up. So we got to do one call. We get that all prepared, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the street, and I'm like, wow, there's been some paving work done here, like an 8-foot square patch was put in, and then like another line went down to a side street. So somebody was here and did some patchwork at this spot, but it's not new. It looks like it's been here for a while. It's not nothing that was done yesterday. Do the one call, and everything comes through clear, whatever, except there's one utility, our local water utility company, which Christine knows who they are. I mean, they have their bright blue lines going right across this patch. I'm like, well, that's interesting now, isn't it? So right where I have my mark from the lining company that told me where my blockage is, goes some blue marking lines. Like, okay, let's dig her up and see what we find. So we dig this open and we find a 6-inch cast iron force main pipe that was sheared in half and packed full of modified stone. And the whole area around that was black sludge, like just as black as you can find, almost to the point it looked like anthracite coal. So we had to get that all excavated out, had a vac truck and all that to clean it up. Like, sure enough, there's an 8-inch ductile pipe, brand new looking, one straight across going another direction. So I know all the guys at the water authority. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to get to the bottom of this. What's going on? So I get a hold of one of the head guys, and he's like, man, nobody really knew much. I'm like, I had to kind of get after him about it. Like, come on, nobody's in trouble. I just need to get as much information on this thing as I possibly can to figure out what's going on. Like, well, the guy that put that line in, he got fired and he don't work here anymore. But we do remember that, yeah, they broke through that, but it was an abandoned line. So since it was an abandoned line, they just packed it full of modified when they were backfilling and off to the races and left it alone. I'm like, okay, that's actually a force main coming from the factory down the street. And they're like, well, that was like 2 years ago that we did that. I'm like, wow, 2 years ago. So we had to put some 45 fittings and everything to get around their pipe, because they went straight through, you know, where this was. And so that, well, we'll get you some fit. We got all the fittings. If you need some, come get them. We'll help you get it back. So we got all back together, got the pump station up and running. But after we went through the whole scenario of this thing, they were pumping for 2 years raw sewage. But the water authority's position was that property owner that owned that utility force main pipe never had it registered in with anything that had ever existed. So they're like, well, our hands are clean because that thing doesn't exist. Not that they didn't come out and not mark it. They didn't even know they didn't even know it went through the streets of Souderton. The highway guys did, but the highway guys said the same thing. It's not our pipe, so we don't come out and mark it. It's not our responsibility. We don't own that pipe. That private factory owns that pipe. So that private factory got a wake-up call, because they had bought that facility from another company back in the day, and you know, just the way it was back in those days, you just did that. So they never had a record of it. So they now are paying us once a year to come out and inspect the pump station and the force main and all that, and keep tight records of all that. But I thought it was very interesting. If you go through the whole thing, like, well, the excavator guy thought it was abandoned because nobody marked it. So rather than cap it or repair it or whatever, and the reason they didn't repair it was it would take a lot of work to dive underneath the pipe they were putting in. So they just packed it up. But after you just go back to everybody's memory, like, oh yeah, that was like 2 years ago, and yeah, that guy that did it doesn't work anymore, and we're not responsible because nobody ever had that register that pipe even existed. And so it was like, you know, we can't, I felt good because for the first time ever, I didn't do anything wrong on this job. I was the guy there trying to fix it and get people together, and everybody's running for the hills. It was like, look, nobody's in trouble. This is just what went on back in 1950. Yeah. So, you know, the highway department knew all about this pipe and where it ended, but at the same time, they didn't own it. Right. So yeah. They're not going to come out and mark it. Why would they? It's not their pipe. So it was kind of like, fellas, we got to get this thing for the future. It's going to happen again. It's running like 600 feet down this road. This ain't going to be the last time that somebody whacks into it. So get the thing, get the owner to get it on paper. So the next time the call goes out, they will get the call to come mark their pipe or pass the responsibility over to the borough of Saverton or whatever. But you know, now's the time. This is crazy. We pumped for almost 2 years of raw sewage underneath the street. And then when it blew out in the guy's field behind the house, whatever, it was pumping into that thing for a long time. So it's like an abandoned pipe supposedly wasn't an abandoned pipe and turned out to be very dangerous. So
it's amazing.
But I don't really think anybody can be like, you know, pinned down like this is your fault and everything. It's just like we were talking about, things were different back in the day when they put stuff in the ground. There wasn't a whole lot of record keeping. So I appreciate the what we have now with the system. As a contractor, sometimes it can be a hassle, but at the same time, it's not a hassle. It can save your life, or it can save a lot of problems. And I think I will always stress teamwork. If we can all work together and not just think that because we made the call, or like Matt said, you know, that's just the first thing you do. So if we all work together to do the best that we can with this, I think we can really make things a lot easier on ourselves and everybody involved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, yeah, so teamwork. So big thank you to our audience for joining us today, for staying with us, for these good stories. You will notice a survey when you sign off of Zoom. I'd love to get your feedback on what you got out of this roundtable, and if there are any topics or any way we can make them better in the future. Last call, any final words from our panel? Any final things you want to say? Okay, huge thank you to my panel. I loved hearing from you all, so many different perspectives, and hoping we can all work together really well in the future with lots of good communication. So thank you to the panelists, thank you to our viewers, and I always sign off my roundtables by saying that magical things happen when you bring together passionate people. So thank you all for sharing your passions today. And we look forward to seeing you at future roundtables. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.